welcome to this edition of the Perspective in Inflammation podcast, a series brought to you by the CSF. In this edition, we will be exploring the evolution of RA registries. My name is Anja Strangfeld and I'm from the German Rheumatism Research Centre, in short DRFZ, which is located in Berlin, Germany. And I'm here today with Professor Loreto Carmona from the Instituto de Salud Musculoskeletal, located in Madrid, Spain. Loreto, was this okay?
Wow, how you pronounce so well musculoskeletal? That's so difficult.
Yeah. So I'm very happy that we have the chance today to talk about biologic registries, and we know each other for quite a long time through our work with the biologic registries. And maybe we should, today we want to discuss the history of these biologic registries, how they were developed. Maybe some of you don't know the whole history. We are already that old that we know the whole
everything
development of the registries.
Yeah.
And we also want to review some important lessons that we have learned from the registries and why we think they are important and what have been done, what is their actual role as well. And finally, we also want to report on the Euler COVID-19 register that was involved just lately this year. And yeah, maybe I should start with the beginning of the registries, which was in the late 1990s, early 20 or 2000. And at that time, TNF inhibitors were firstly improved for the treatment of RA. And they were the first substances used in rheumatology that had a specific target. And the community, the rheumatology community, was on one hand, we were all very happy about those really effective treatments because they gave the chance that patients where the CS DMARD, the conventional synthetic DMARDs, had failed, they could be treated with another option. And we have to say those treatments were really effective. On the one hand, the community was also concerned about possible side effects of those treatments due to their mode of action. Especially the concern was with serious infections and the development of malignancies. And therefore, the so-called biologic registries were set up in various European countries, like in Spain, UK, Sweden, and also in Germany. And here we also got to know through our work with the registries. And after a short while, also other countries set up their registries. And nowadays, I can't even count how many countries have registers. And and all of the registrars have their specificities. Some may link their data to the population registers, like in the Scandinavian countries. We in Germany, we are not allowed to do this. Therefore, we have detailed information on disease activity and glucocorticoid dosages, for example. But all registers, they have the intention to look at the long-term safety and effectiveness of the treatments and to look at questions that cannot be answered by randomized controlled trials. And yes, Loreto, how was your experience with the registers? So you have been there also quite at the beginning.
Yeah, I still remember one day I was working at the Spanish Society of Rheumatology in the research unit, and they had this meeting of the very old, grumpy old men. And well, maybe they were not that old at that time, but I was very young. And they say, here, Loreto, we are going to do a database of biologics, and the name is going to be BioBadaser. And I say, yeah, but what is it about? You have to do this. I say, okay. So do we have any other, any other registers or databases to, get some to know them or something? And they say, well, we know that the British and the Germans and the Swedish are trying to do something. So try to write them and ask them how to do ours. And it was very young, nobody knew me. And I started writing everybody and no answer. And they said, no, we do not have, we are in the process to have a register, but we still don't have anything. That was 1998 or 1997. It was very, very early.
Oh, very early.
So yeah, it was very, very early. So I tried to, to understand what a register was. At that time, I also had worked in the Spanish Medicines Agency for a while, and they wanted to be part of the register also at somehow. What were many other things, and in OMERACT they started this safety group, and they were decided what type of things we had to measure. So it was all these things happening at the same time, and I think they became real in Europe. But while the three of you, fixed the template, the Manchester template, and more, the big three registers were able to, merge in the very long term. We were left out because we had no idea that you were only going to focus on array, and we focused on everything that was on Biologic, and we didn't know that what other things were included in that template. But it was very interesting, and I think at the end, being different also was not that bad, because we had that thing of merging or showing other things, so it was not that bad. I think I learned so much with time.
I remember you were the first ones who could also, for example, evaluate infections across the different diagnoses. And I mean, we have to say, you were the first ones who found out about tuberculosis risk in TNF inhibitors.
I still remember. Yeah, you will not believe how this happened. I was in Manchester because at some point I wanted to develop a research unit. Well, the research unit at that time was myself, so that was the unit, right? Just one. So I wanted to develop a research unit in the Spanish Society of Rheumatology. So I went to Manchester to see how they managed to develop one, and there were 90 people at that time. It was like, oh my God, I will never be able to get this. But I was doing the first analysis, the first 6-month analysis of our register. Mm-hmm. And then I started doing the analysis, and I said, oh my God, this is really more than a signal. This is quite a lot of cases of tuberculosis. So now I told Alan Silman, who was the boss at that time, and he said, how can you have a register? You don't have a register. And I said, yes, we do one. And here we have a tuberculosis. We have, in fact, the majority didn't believe that I had found that until the ACR. This happened in July when we saw this, and then we, or the end of June, July, something. So it was right at the time to send to the ACR, to submit to ACR. Then in the ACR, we sent the poster. And in that same year, it was Fred Wolf who said that tuberculosis was not a problem because he couldn't find a difference, but the rate in the United States was much lower than in Spain. So we were able to see it. And well, I remember that ACR when people came and said, oh, actually, you had a register. That was true. So it was kind of, yeah, why wouldn't you believe that we have a register? Yeah, I like very much the idea of providing data for the society, because immediately, once we knew that tuberculosis was a problem, we got together and we developed recommendations and we look at the rates before and after. And that was a change time. Mm-hmm. That was a change. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, it was great. You had the recommendations, and then the rates went down. I think this was a very good success history of the registers. Also, they were from that time point on. I think everybody was also convinced that those real world data, how you can call it, are really important to. And I mean, it shows also two things. Like the first thing is then there was a signal in the States with spontaneous reporting before, but there was no denominator. So without a denominator, you can only say yes, we have a signal, but we can't put it into perspective. And the other thing is you need the prevalence for in your events, or if it's very very rare, it's hard to say something about.
Yeah, and rare effects. That's what when we went to the next step, right? And we have to move, not join, but not even merge, but because we did meta-analysis. But if we hadn't had registers in so many countries, we couldn't have seen what happened with lymphoma or melanoma or things like that. Yeah. Why don't you tell me something about that experience? Because I wasn't that clear experience anymore. The merging and all those meetings.
From our biologic registries meetings or the melanoma analysis?
Yeah, melanoma analysis and the lymphoma analysis, because I was not involved myself. How was that?
Oh, this was at the beginning was really strange, because melanoma is also a very rare event. I mean, if you look at your data, if we look at our data, we have not a lot, and that's why it was really important to make a combined analysis. And then we set together all the registers, and we were thinking of what would be the best to do. And Joachim was, at that time, he was not retired, and he had a head on this analysis, and we said, okay. And we were thinking of, I mean, just to count rates and then would not be sufficient. So maybe we should standardize it, like age and sex. And then we found out as well that there are so many differences in the melanoma incidence and prevalence in the respective countries that we have to standardize, that we can't just put all together. So like a kind of pooling. There was no way to pool it. So we were only able to report those rates standardized on base of the population rate in this respective country. And what I've never thought is that there is a very high melanoma rate in Sweden, whereas in Spain or Portugal it's quite.
Well, but I tell you why. Because they come to the beaches in Spain and they get burned. That's why.
Yeah.
And we are not. We are just so used to it.
Yeah, I think so too, because and they half a year they don't have enough sun, and when they have sun, they
they burn. Yeah, but that was those are collateral findings that we get from the register that we never expected. Like nobody's really looking at those kind of things, and then we learned a lot about those collateral things.
It was a very great experience to come together and to make those two analyses, also with the lymphoma. But also with the lymphoma, it was not that easy. So we could only look at how is the distribution of the lymphomas under the different substances. So we were not able to, the country-specific differences are also quite big. And for example, one of the first collaborative analyses that I tried to do was in 2010 or 11 with the pancreatic carcinoma. And I thought leflunomide could be a risk factor for this carcinoma. And then I was asking Kimi from the BSRBR and Johan from from Sweden, and we were all looking in our data, but then we found out that, for example, leflunomide is not really prescribed in in the UK or in Sweden even. It was 4% or so. They don't prescribe it. So you have to keep it in mind, but the differences are quite big.
Yeah. There are more things than just the drugs. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
And I think it's also very interesting what we came along with the methodology. Like since our beginning up to now, we've learned so much about our how to analyze the events. Yeah,
in fact, there was this task force, the Euler task force, on how to. That it became more than a task force, because at the end it became a reporting guideline for registers. So it's in Equator for me. That makes me so happy to see it in Equator. Something coming from Euler, I love it.
Yeah, right. But Biobadasea, was it from the first start on? Was it web-based, or did you also start with paper?
Oh, we started with faxes. So we had 3 types of faxes. It was for the patient, for the treatment, or for the adverse event. And yes, we had a fellow who came every afternoon and then entered the data. But it was very early on when we moved to online. In fact, I think we were the first online, because whenever I talked to the British, and I couldn't believe that we were the first ones. I said, how come? I thought the rest of the world was more advanced than we were. And we were online by 2001. Yeah.
You were online 2000?
Yeah. So it was only in 1999, and then we got fed up of faxes. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, Reddit was started in 2001, and and so we are still on paper.
Yeah.
Paper and faxes. Yeah. But I think we have learned. I mean, we have learned a lot up to now for regarding the malignancy risk and serious infection risk, and I think still on paper, but still we have the potential.
Anja, do you use you use Rabbit to inform the guidelines in Germany?
Yes, also.
Because in Spain we have specific recommendations on how to deal with safety issues with biologics and with all medications in rheumatic diseases. And some of the recommendations are based on what we analyze in the register. So I think that's one of the most important things of the registers, that they inform the guidelines.
Yeah, I also think that's very important. So do you also inform them, for example, when they have like the question, biologics after malignancies, and you haven't published? Do you, despite this, do you then still use the data and the result from the register?
If it was, for instance, not published but in a congress, it could be used. It could be used. Yeah, because I think it's like with COVID. You know, when you need safety information, you need it now.
Yes.
So yeah, you cannot wait that much. Like, but at least to reassure, I mean, the level of evidence will be lower because it's not enough. You don't have all the information on that, but you still use it. And clinicians really appreciate to have the information to answer the questions they're asking for. Also, the medicines agency, of course, they were asking, is there any problem with thromboembolic events or not? And we couldn't see anything. And I know that in Euler 2020, your group found there was not an association, in fact, so the opposite.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's what we do also in RABBIT, the national agencies for drug safety and so on. They have to rely on the spontaneous reporting. Again, we have the spontaneous reporting and the missing denominator. So they are asking, oh, what do you see in the register? And most of the time we see it a bit different because we have a denominator and we have all treatments together. That's, I mean, with the
talking about denominators, because I think that's the most important. That's the denominator across all of us. So at the beginning, we compare patients on biologics, mainly anti-TNF or TNF inhibitors, versus DMARD. But nowadays, we have to compare them between themselves, right? Because most of the patients are on something. We still have a lot of patients on classic DMARDs, but sometimes, especially for the risk, we have to compare the new molecules with the TNF inhibitors and things like that.
I mean, it's not getting easier. I think at the moment it's quite complex to have an analysis. That's that you have to, because it's a very it's also very different in patients that have had, for example, their third or fourth line of treatment. So this thing already makes a big difference.
Yeah, and the calendar year, remember, the patients at the beginning, you cannot compare them with the patients nowadays, which are completely, they're much better, much better. Yeah.
Much better. And even that's something we have analyzed. We made 3 different time periods, and we have analyzed what was driving the decision for the first biologic treatment in the time period at the beginning of the century and later on and nowadays. So we have found that things like older age and being female and not having private insurance and having some comorbidities were at the beginning of the century, they were contradictory against the decision for biologic treatment. And now, or for example, chronic heart failure. And nowadays, chronic heart failure is more or less a factor that is driving you to prescribe biologic treatment.
Yeah, because of the inflammation, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so, we have changed a lot. Yeah, we have changed a lot. Yeah, the things that we were afraid of at the beginning, now we are just so reassured they are not a problem.
Yeah, right. But I remember this chronic heart failure analysis also came when I was in at the Charité, and I also had a patient. She was really, really nice, an older woman, and she reminded me very much of my grandma. And then she had the chronic heart failure for a long time, and I was not aware that because I was very it was my first year in the Charité, and I was not so aware that that we should not prescribe biologic. And she felt so great. She was so happy. And then I was like, oh, your chronic heart failure is maybe in a stage we should not, where we should withdraw the treatment. And we withdrew, and she didn't feel well anymore. So and I was thinking to myself, why did we do that? I really felt bad, and I was coming here to Joachim, and I said, Joachim, we have so many data, we have to think about this.
Yeah, I know. And what about today? We have so many data that we haven't looked at. I mean, I don't know what to do with the registers nowadays, because I don't know if we have enough questions for the registers. What do you think?
I think, yes, we have some.
Do you have some?
Yeah, I mean, because nowadays we can also ask about those different modes of action. For example, now we have not only the TNF inhibitors, we have B cell depleters, T cell modulators, IL-6 inhibitors. We have now the JAK inhibitors. We have a lot of different treatments, but that doesn't make it easier, because now you also have to model the decision for the treatment of this specific mode of action. So that's
lots of channeling bias in the
yes, and then we again come to that what you said before with the comparing each patient. Would be best to compare him with himself in different modes of action, but then it's also not so good, because he already had then a treatment failure more when the patient has another mode of action. But you know what we can now do with the different modes of action, we can also think of more individualized treatment. For example, patients with obesity, maybe they are better with cell-driven treatments compared to cytokine-driven treatments or something like this.
Yeah.
Older patients.
But don't you think that in order to do those analyses, we need much larger numbers? I mean, either we do analysis in all the registers at the same time, with all the adjustments and everything, or we will not have enough numbers in individual registers.
Yeah, I think the same. And then we again have to think about the differences between the countries. So we haven't found the golden egg.
No, we haven't yet. We haven't.
No.
Well, it's we've had quite a long conversation here about registers, even though I think they are monsters because they take all the money and all the time and everything, all the resources. But yes, I think they are fascinating, aren't they?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, usually we don't have so much time to talk about registers so long, because we are very focused.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, you know what I really found very nice, that we are now also together in the COVID register. That's
yes. Yeah. I think it's that's a good thing to do. Yeah, to have a specific study group also for registers and all that.
And okay, we can't say register. I mean, we have worked with registers, we know that the register is more or less a long-term study.
Yeah, it's not the COVID register. It's a COVID database. It's a database. Yeah.
Because it's cross-sectional, but I mean, it was
it's kind of a survey more than other thing. It's a survey, not really a register.
Yeah. But still very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, you can tell. You can tell it's been very interesting. The whole thing has been very interesting. The whole thing. Okay.
And we have a lot of, I mean, what I really like, I mean, the COVID pandemic, I don't know, it's very terrible. And you know, at the beginning, you were still in Madrid when you were phoning, and in the background, there were all those patients. I was,
yeah.
I'm happy that I have my home office.
Yes, it was kind of scary at some point, especially because every day everything changed. But I mean, that's the importance of real world data. So if you have enough data, and we have you collaborate, like happens in the registers or in this COVID register or survey or database, whatever. You get answers much faster than if you just look at your patients, the few patients that you might have. And
And I think this is a very positive thing of the pandemic, that it brought so many scientists together. And I was never involved in networks that were growing so fast. I mean, scientifically, it's a very interesting time also.
Yeah, very interesting. Yes, so I guess the denominator of all these things is collaboration, right? I don't think we can do anything by ourselves. We cannot do it. Not in epidemiology. I don't know if in a lab you can do what you can discover something by yourself, but in you know in at the epidemiology levels you cannot do anything without collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I think so too. But that is also what is making fun. Or I mean,
Yeah, it's really
I would
fun.
only sit in my
Yeah.
It would be not very funny.
Yeah, people think that the epidemiologists are boring, but look at us. We are not boring now, aren't we?
No. But I mean, 1 year ago, everybody was an epidemiologist. What's that?
Now everybody's epidemiologist now.
Yes. Well, at least they know what an epidemiologist is and what it's doing.
Well, I think it's time to close, to bring this to a closure. I think I've enjoyed a lot talking to you, Anja, and reviewing the past, our glories, our problems, and everything.
Yeah, me too, Loreto. And I really think it was always fun to work with you, and I'm very happy that we are together in the Euler COVID database. And yes, and I also think, I mean, as a closing remark, I hope that that also the registers will go on, because I think we still have a lot of questions to answer, and if we, as you said, if we are able to answer it in one single register, or if we need collaboration with a lot of or with some other registers, that has to be evaluated, and I think it's a very, very good instrument, a very good pharmacovigilance instrument. And I think we did not only learn something about treatments and side effects, we learned a lot about the disease also, about inflammation and how it affects the whole body system and different other organs as well, like in RA, myocardial infarction risk and so on. So, okay, I also think before I get again talkative, I would also close, and I hope that all those who will listen to our conversation, I mean, I enjoyed it, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it as well, our discussion today. And I will close our discussion, and I want to say, please don't forget to subscribe to the CSF on your favorite podcast app, and visit cytokinesignaling.com for slide summaries of the latest research and free to access CME accredited courses. And I thank you all for listening, and I thank you, Loreto, for being here with me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Tschüss. Adios.
Adios.